Awesome. Thanks a lot. It's great to see y'all. Excited to kick off another engineering product biweekly. So I've got the first couple of items on the agenda, and I wanted to kind of highlight our OKRs for fiscal year 21 Q1. So it's the end of March, and we've actually only got this current release 12.10 to make progress on these things. So I wanted to highlight the support incremental IACV goal. And I wanted to ask, so there's two things. There's deliver the top 2 customer requested features as prioritized by product management, and then also deliver 15 items in the performance or infra dev dashboard. I have a little more visibility on the first. I have none on the second. So I wanted to just kind of put that out there to say, how's this going? How can we work as a stage to help achieve this goal? I think I've talked with Matt a little bit about one of the features, and I think we've agreed that we're going to kind of miss on that one probably by a release. But I'm curious, like how the second kind of like requested feature is going, and also how the performance goal is kind of going as well. Dan, can you help talk to the latter at all? I have no visibility on this. I really don't know how we're tracking this.
Yeah, so I'm just reading through this right now. So I mean, generally the tracking is supposed to be in Periscope or Sisense or however we pronounce it. But Liam and I also encountered that a lot of the like group specific dashboards seem to have been archived. It looks like somebody tried to go through and clean things up. And I'm not sure we've actually figured that out yet. So a little bit of a hiccup there.
Okay. Cool. So I'm looking at so it looks like that 15 items across the dashboard was across maybe the entire section, and it looks like our key result is just delivering 2 items, which it looks like we hit on. So that's good. So it looks like, according to what I see here, that we're on track for that at least, which is awesome. Does that jive with what you see, Dan?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. All right, great. So then I guess I'll turn to the second, which is the top 2 customer requested features around, I guess it's extending group managed accounts to all groups. Luca, it looks like that we still have some items that are going to slip to 13.0. Do you think that is accurate? Like, it looks like we're going to miss on this one as well. Is that accurate?
Yes, we're not going. This isn't going to make you one.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I'll update the issue with kind of an update, and let's kind of take it offline in terms of product, how we can make sure that if this kind of comes back as an OKR for Q2, that we can make sure that we scope down our epics and see if we can hit it in the future. So cool. Thanks. John Mason, do you want to voice over your comment?
Yes, you were looking at a list of customer requested features and said, oh, we've got 2. And I just wanted to kind of follow along and look what you were looking at and, see what those were. So if you could just pass me a link, that could be great. Sure.
The link that I was referring to was this one here. So regarding the 2 issues, we selected as part of our OKR kind of 2 features that we wanted to kind of go ahead and deliver. And that was based off of recommendations for product. So we just there's no Periscope board associated with that.
I see. I misunderstood. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Matt, do you want to voice over?
Yeah, just I don't know. I imagine it's probably worth talking about at least briefly, but you and I had at least talked about how at least part of my disconnect on this was kind of the timing of it, like for my own personal and work travel, but also the kind of like high level timing of, I think it was announced in February or like brought up in February, which I think is basically the start of Q1. So was there any feedback or insight you have as far as like for future OKRs, are we going to know about it maybe further in advance, or will it just be kind of like an ongoing thing?
Well, that's what I'm going to cover with Eric, I think. So like, that's why I'm satisfied with just knowing that we're going to kind of miss on both of these because of the timing of the OKR. But I agree with you. I think one of the root causes of that is that the OKR kind of emerged in like mid-February, I think. So by the time that we had actually like figured out which features we wanted to kind of tackle, we only had 2 more releases to do it. While we were doing planning for the second release, so really like we were kind of, this 12.10 was really the only release that we had in order to kind of make sure that we hit on these goals. So that I feel like is a miss. And so I'm gonna quickly ask like Scott and Eric to say, like, do we anticipate this being a recurring OKR? I think it's a great one, but I think that we need to make sure that at the start of the quarter we have everything ready to go. We have expectations, we have scoping that's set, and the epics are kind of fixed so that we can kind of burn the issues in that down. So I'm like I mentioned, I'll comment on that issue to say, here's what we need for success next time. If we can commit to having this as a Q2 OKR, let's go ahead and start that process right now, and then we'll kind of collaborate next week to find out which to do this exercise again and make sure we're ready for it kind of next month. So
Yeah, because I think two quick clarifying things on that is that at least for the Q1 OKR, I think it either assumed or was generally disruptive to like if we were working on other priorities from like external sources, or like customers are saying, hey, this is high priority, but then internally we feel that these other things are important. Like that, at least for me, that was kind of disruptive. I imagine I'm probably not the only one. So that's something to consider. And if we're going forward, if we're maybe choosing those top 2 IACV based on, I mean, it should be based on like the objective data, right? But if there's some element of, well, we're picking this because this is what I'm currently working on, then that also potentially skews the intent of the OKR, right? Like, let me work on these 2 things that I'm already in progress on that have high ACV value versus pivoting to these other things that I have to like kind of start from scratch on, maybe validation of some sort, research, whatever the case might be.
well, I mean, we should be working, like, the intent of the OKR is to make sure that we're working on the most business, the highest business value features that we have. If there are already things that we're working on, then I say, great, amazing. Then all we need to do is just make sure that we globally optimize within the stage to make sure that like we are making sure that we can deliver that. And that, if we have to pull resources or folks from another group in order to make sure that happens, that makes that all the more easier because it's like a stage level OKR. So I think it's, if we're not, I think it's a forcing function to make sure that we're always working on like the highest value, lowest risk thing that we have the strongest business case for. And if that's stuff you're already working on, then amazing. Then to keep doing what you're doing. Like when we actually like created these features for the OKR, like we were already working on these things anyway. But I think that where we kind of where what was challenging was like figuring out where to put a stake in the ground to say like this is the scope at which we do get positive business value from, and we can stop here, and then we feel really strongly that we can take these to market and they'll actually be able to win deals with customers. That I think took a little bit more time than we kind of realized. So but yeah, I'm with you all the way. I think the intent is not to do new things, but just do the things that we're confident in.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Jeremy, oh, I'm sorry. What you were saying basically is like if this is a process that we're gonna do each quarter, then basically we're better prepared and we've already chosen things and scoped them in a way that basically we can be more successful. Is that basically?
Yeah, that's right. So what happened, since you weren't here at the time, was we set this OKR in February, and this was a new OKR. We'd never done this before, where we said, well, we work on the 2 highest IACV features that you have for the stage, and so it wasn't. So that meant, what is a feature? Where do we start and stop in terms of like, if we stop here, if we deliver these particular capabilities, then we know we have confidence that we're actually going to like be able to sell something that actually has like positive business value. That took us more time to kind of make sure that we had a justifiable business case around. It didn't change really like our priorities in any way, because we're already working on like, high ACV, features. But for the purpose of the OKR, it was requiring you to like deliver something discrete, and like where we created those boundaries was a little bit hard to figure out. So I guess the takeaway is that we'll just start that process a little bit sooner. So if I think like this is likely going to be an OKR for Q2, so we should probably. So what I think would make sense is for us to start that process now. Groom the epics, make sure that we know exactly where the scope starts and ends, and then work with our engineering partners to make sure that we can deliver. Cool. Thanks, y'all. So so the action item is on me to make sure that I communicate that up to product leadership, and then if we're going to do this again for Q2, I'll communicate that out, and then we'll start that process this month. Cool. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of cover was a merge request that I opened up on the Managed Handbook page. So we have talked a little bit about process, and we are trying. I've been thinking I think it was last biweekly meeting we had. I volunteered to create like a merge request to try to define a little bit more process. Because we've been talking a little bit about we need to have some consistency with like the product development flow, but leave flexibility for individual groups to kind of figure out the details on their own. But one thing that we need is some consistency with how product and engineering kind of work together, and what boxes that we check before we put something ready for development. So in this change, I proposed an MVC of simply stating that, sorry if the diff is a little bit hard to read, but the main theme that I've noticed is in the last meeting, I think Dennis was a proponent of using the product development flow a little bit more strictly. And the problem that we want to try to solve is making sure that when we are transitioning an issue from it's not implementable, we're still kind of figuring things out, to we're ready to build it, there should be some consistency in terms of like who's actually looking at the issue and who gives it a thumbs up. So the only process that I proposed here was that issues should not receive a specific milestone for a specific release until they have received some sort of thumbs up from product and engineering, including an issue weight. And the reason for that proposal is to make sure that we are not setting expectations for when we're going to deliver something until both engineering has like looked at something and they have deemed it somewhat implementable and given it at least a t-shirt size, and product has a implementable proposal that we are happy with and we would feel confident getting into the product. So if those two things are in place, then we can feel good about estimating it, scheduling it for a particular release, but not before.
Quick question I want to ask. Thanks, Jeremy, for creating that merge request. What do people think about, because we plan right now like one milestone ahead, right? Like we'll do a planning issue in 12/10 for 13. Like what do folks think about maybe doing it an extra milestone ahead so that we have a lot more time to do that planning? So then we've got like 2 milestones pretty much like planned before we don't have to kind of like swarm around things. And then the proposal that you've just added makes a lot more sense because we've got more time to get that thumbs up from estimations. John,
Yeah, I think it depends. Like ideally, I would love that. Personally, like as an individual contributor, I never had time to plan that far in advance. I would love it if like we got to that point. And what I think that this MVC does is it kind of forces you to do some of that, because you no longer can do things kind of just in time. You have to wait until like an issue gets engineering feedback, which obviously takes some cycles and some time before everyone gives it their blessing. So it kind of forces you a little bit to plan things in advance. But I totally agree with you. I don't know if I would like write it down to say like, we plan 2 months in advance every single time.
Yeah, I think that would be hard to achieve, and also would hamper our flexibility to change our mind and learn things and decide things later. It would feel to me like an anti-pattern if we knew that much detail so far ahead of when we need to go ahead and do it.
When I know that, go ahead, John Mason. Oh, thank you. Well, I know Dan and I have talked about, at least for the 13.0 planning issue, tossing in some 13.1 plus discovery issues. Discovery in the sense that, hey, these are things that are pretty well thought out at this point, but we have to have that dialogue to break them down. And so surfacing those in the planning issue as kind of like, I originally had it as a stretch goal, but Dan's feedback was, well, let's maybe break that out and make it more obvious that this is not part of this milestone, but please do participate as able so that we can have this discussion early on. So I'll report back with how that goes, but maybe that's one way to work towards this as well.
It kind of sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of sounds like we're sort of hovering in a space of, if we think about the product development flow and we have all of the different workflow statuses that an issue could be at, like some of the things that I do, particularly if it's a large epic, and if we're doing a lot of the research and design stuff, like a milestone before, there'll be like a separate issue, because it's hard to have one issue that goes through different stages, right? So like if we have like a planning, if we want to get all the planning done for this issue in this milestone, we would have like workflow planning or whatever, or problem validation. But the expectation from like a customer standpoint is like, oh, this is going to be delivered in this milestone. But that's not really what we're saying. We're saying like this set status of the issue is going to be delivered in this milestone, but not necessarily the actual feature itself. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of sounds like the sort of territory we're hovering around right now. And I wonder if there's like a more elegant way that we could do that as a team.
At the risk of proposing a thing that I myself am not a fan of, labels that are tied to confidence if they don't already exist. I know deliverable is supposed to be, this is our top priority, but you know, if we have belief to the contrary that yes, this is deliverable, but we're only somewhat confident it'll ship in this particular milestone for reasons, maybe that's a way to do it, but that's another label.
It kind of feels like, yeah, like, and I'm kind of against using labels as a workaround for everything, because I feel like that's already getting super convoluted in the product. And it just kind of seems like there's a couple of things about the way that GitLab works in terms of project management that doesn't really fit in with the way that we need to do things. But yeah, I mean, aside from breaking it down into like issues per status, like to get something shipped, like I don't see another simple way around it, because we can put all these workflow labels out. But like if a customer's looking at it, they're not necessarily going to know what like workflow problem validation means. They might not know that the expectation is to complete that part of the issue's sort of life cycle in that particular milestone. And, you know, if we're the only group doing it or the only stage doing it, like that might not be the expectation for leadership or other people looking at the issues as well. So it's kind of I guess the problem I'm thinking about how we can solve is like, how do we effectively communicate what we're actually trying to achieve with this particular issue in any given milestone?
Go ahead,
Jen. I've been experimenting with an idea, and I haven't gotten very far with my experiment, but of having planning issues, more than one. You know, this one, the next one, the one following, with items that are candidates or that are being worked on from a design standpoint or something listed just in the description of the issue as candidates. And then I don't need to use labels to find them. I can just go to that issue. I can find these are the things that are sort of design priorities. And I don't have to put a milestone on them if I'm not planning on delivering them, so that I can use the milestone labels exclusively for things I would expect to that are estimated, well-formed. I expect to deliver them. And I can keep track of all the things that I want to do, validation, design, all that other stuff on, just by looking ahead to those other planning issues and kind of seeing what's in the table of contents. And then there can be discussion about whether something's going to make it, it's not going to make it, all happening in the planning issue.
John, I think that to me, you're describing, using the product in a way that's not very helpful to what you're trying to do. It feels to me like you're really describing a board with issues that you want to have now and the next release and so on. And then being able to easily see what's there, move things up and down, move things from left to right. Like if I have all these issues, they're not like, first of all, I don't open them all side by side, all the planning issues, and I can drag and drop and move things. Like, it's like using Microsoft Word to do our, issue boards. it feels like we need a better product or a better.
Yeah. If I had a lot of them, I think I'd worry about that. But for me, at this point, the problem with the board is that there's no way to have any discussion. You know, the discussion's buried in individual issues. You can't have a discussion about the milestone, and that's kind of what I find interesting about this idea. Totally unproven, just an experiment. But
so let me take a step back at the problem that I was trying to solve with this, which was I had received feedback in the past that, you know, we schedule issues for particular milestones, and this is sometimes required, right? Like our security issues have to be assigned to a particular milestone, otherwise the bot will yell at you over and over again. But then, like when we actually get to a planning a release, my engineering manager is like, I've never seen this issue before in my life. I have no idea if this is something that we can actually accomplish or not. So the problem I wanted to solve, and I think we should optimize for this first, is making sure that product and engineering are in sync and that we can maximize our throughput and our shared understanding of what we're trying to deliver. How we communicate things to our community, I think, is very important and needs to be a consideration. But I think that we should solve for the first and then consider how we solve the second in context with how we work. Dan, what do you think about this conversation?
Yeah, so I think this is fundamentally about momentum. And more directly, it's about engineering needs issues that are sufficiently refined that when it gets to the point where a PM says, hey, I want to execute this in this upcoming milestone, engineering can say, great, we've already put the work into it that we need to put into it. So below that, underneath that, to get to that point of sufficient refinement, we need sort of momentum, especially on the engineering side. And you know, maybe another way of putting that is just sort of, you know, sufficient attention over a period of time, because we can't refine these things instantly, right? It's not a matter of one exchange. It's a process of ongoing exchanges to get to that point of refinement. So I think it's, you know, another way of phrasing momentum is maybe just eyeballs over a period of time. So like Matt and I, like he mentioned just the other day, talked about on these planning issues, including as just a matter of course, a section where Matt tells me, hey, these are the issues I'm interested in refining to the point where we can execute them, you know, in the next somewhere in the next 3 to 4 milestones, which is super helpful to me. Another thing, Jeremy, that you've introduced is the on-deck label, which has been super helpful for me. And I don't want to speak for other engineering managers here, but you know, I think I'm roughly capturing their interests as well. You know, if we can have a better idea of what we need to put our sort of like weekly or even daily sort of discovery attention into, that'd be super helpful.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the problem I'm trying to solve with that merge request, which is that, like, if you want to do that with an on-deck label, if you want to do it with a milestone, if you want to do that in a sync conversation, that's all fine. But the point is that we need to have some sort of refinement that goes up until that process, until that moment where we say this issue is now ready for an engineer to start on it, and that is something that has to happen in a partnership with product and engineering, and that is all that this merge request is trying to kind of suggest. So like I linked to a couple of issues in that merge request where I'm like, I added a checkbox like thing at the very bottom, which is like, if an engineer clicks on this and says like, this is ready to go, then amazing, we're ready to schedule it. But teams can figure out how they want to do that and execute on that figure out that problem. But ultimately both need to come to the table before we can schedule something. That's all.
that's right. Yeah. And there should be nothing controversial about that.
Yep. Completely agree with the principle. And in 2B, there's a link to something that the group import is mulling over right now. We're trying to come to something we want to try out. So we're still kind of open for discussion. I'd like your feedback on it, but I think it tries to solve the same problem, which is having a better understanding of things that we want to schedule for a release ahead of that release, where engineering had time to provide their input and vote on if this is ready or not.
Cool. Very good. So please provide your feedback in the merge request. If that looks good, I'll probably merge it early next week. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, so this is a fairly small thing. You know, I've noticed that there has been some confusion about the delivery label and how it differs from milestone. According to the definition, it doesn't differ from milestone. So it's just kind of made me wonder whether we need it. And there's some sort of like small areas of confusion, which is that engineers have to remember to apply the label, and it's just sort of visually one more label to sort through. But there's also some bigger implications of it, like Chris Leffelholtz has even called for more training about this because people don't know how to use it. So it just seems like sort of a distraction. And I'm wondering, is it being used in ways that maybe I don't understand and I'm not aware of? Or could we just sort of, at the very least, consider it optional? And like I personally probably wouldn't use it.
I can't give you a reference right now, but I thought I had read something in the last week or two that suggested that there were some automated processes related to that delivery label that are sort of GitLab wide and not just related to us.
And that's true. And
Okay.
I actually mentioned those in that issue. The funny thing is they're based off of the milestone assignment. So, deliverable is kind of like, is even in the code just kind of piled on top of this milestone assignment, which just makes me wonder, do we need the
That's
deliverable
funny.
label?
Okay.
I think that was born out of a time when we used deliverable and stretch, like Harris maybe kind of mentioned in his comment, so it didn't make sense for us to, whack any one of the nodes if they like missed a stretch issue, but it did for a deliverable issue. So both could be scheduled for a milestone, and then stretch is like, if you actually miss. So, you could say that the same kind of applies right now, but based off of how I understand that we plan, we don't put things in a milestone that we don't have some reasonable confidence of delivering. If we don't, then it shouldn't be in the milestone. So I personally am supportive. It's less stuff we have to maintain. So I'll jump in that issue and voice that over.
Cool. And, with the stretch label, maybe we could apply a P2, P3, P4 to say, like a P4 would say, we only have 25% confidence this is going to make it into the milestone. So we have, again, sort of like maybe a little bit of a parallel universe of labels there.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think it depends on like how we're setting our KPI, like our OKRs, right? Like, which I don't remember, to be honest with you. Like if we're putting consideration at, I don't believe we're considering that in our current like goals or our current logic. So if that's the case, then it shouldn't be a consideration. We should just like, if we schedule something for a milestone, did it get delivered? Yes, no. And that's a simple task. So
Totally.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. We're 2 minutes over. Thanks everyone for a great conversation. I really appreciate it. See you in a couple weeks. Cheers.